Hello and welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about monochrome photography. In this video we're going to ask ourselves why it still has a resonance in 2024. I'm going to look at the sort of photographs that are really well suited to monochrome photography. I'm going to talk about whether we should go out and shoot for monochrome photography or look at it in post-production. And I'm going to walk you through some of the processing techniques that I use for black and white and monochrome photography. So let's start off and ask ourselves, why is monochrome photography or black and white photography still so popular in 2024? Well, first off, there is a classic element about black and white photography. It harkens back to old black and white films and the great black and white photographs that we've seen over decades and throughout our lives. In terms of films, depending on your age, you may think of Bacall and Bogey, or you may think of James Dean, or you may think of more recent black and white films like Roma and Belfast. So there is a timelessness to black and white photography. Something that you see in black and white seems to be out of time. It also reminds us of playing around in dark rooms when we were younger with chemicals and baths and enlargers. I think something about black and white photography is that it tends to denote importance. If something is in black and white, we think and we tend to have a thought that it's more important than a colour photograph. And it reminds us of all the great black and white photographers, street photographers like Henri Cartier-Bresson, the Dust Bowl photographer Dorothea Lange, obviously the landscapes of Ansel Adams, and photojournalism from the Magnum team, and especially wartime pictures from Robert Capa. I love black and white photography, monochrome photography, and I've made black and white photographs in many different environments. So firstly, in landscape photography, Lake Agnes up in Canada, at Cobbles Point, in Felixstowe, my local go-to location, Zabriskie Point in Death Valley, what an incredible location that is, and Monument Valley in Utah. And this picture here that I took at the Old Man of Store in Skye just a year or so ago. There is something about black and white photography that gives portraiture a really good, strong feel to it. And I've used black and white photography in the studio, and here you can see the different sort of styles that you can get, even when you're not using colour. And I use it a lot in weddings, and here are some examples that I've taken at weddings. I particularly like this picture of the bride looking over the groom's shoulder and staring down my barrel. Black and white photography has been a staple in street photography, and here you've got examples of the London Underground during COVID, late night at my local station, a bench in Paris that sort of reminds me a little bit of the early Bob Dylan images of New York. Monochrome photography is really great for architecture and buildings, and here you've got a underground station in Washington DC, and also the Jewel at Changi Airport in Singapore. I really like black and white photography to emphasize textures, and this first building is in Singapore. This image is of fronds from a fern in New Zealand, and these sand dunes in Oman. I love using monochrome when I see something that's cool, and I particularly like things which have chrome, because chrome in monochrome can be really brilliant. So a couple of days ago I saw a poll from Andrew Atkinson, who runs photography polls on Twitter, and it's always good fun. And he asked, when working with digital images, when do you decide to make an image black and white? And I thought it was a really interesting question. The results were 57% said when I'm post-processing, 29% said when I'm out shooting, and only 14% said when I go out to shoot. And I dived in a little bit into the answers, and basically a lot of the people said, well, actually I do all three things, which is I either plan to go out and take photographs in black and white, or when I'm out there I see something that makes sense to shoot it in black and white, or alternatively when I get back home and I think maybe that a particular image might look good in black and white. And I think I'm probably much the same. I find it quite interesting that so many people say that they only decide to convert something to black and white in post-production. I sort of wonder whether, and I may be guilty of this, is that I'm trying to sort of create timelessness or denote importance to something by changing it into black and white. I think when I go out to shoot in black and white, I'm thinking in a very specific way, and I'm thinking about pre-visualization. And what I mean by that is what this particular image will look like when it's made in black and white. And I'm thinking about the following things when I'm looking for a subject to shoot in black and white. Firstly, something that is high contrast. Once you remove the color, you are really focusing in shades of gray. Not 50 shades of grey, but shades of grey. And you're trying to focus on where you can bring forward different shapes and textures and I'm going to say colour, but different places in the picture. And a high contrast environment really helps you to do that. The second thing is you're looking for structure. In black and white, you're looking for something that is going to make a strong composition. Because you're not relying on colour to make something jump out at you, you're looking for something that is a strong compositional frame. And consequently, you're looking for shapes that are interesting. And you're also looking for textures, something that will come alive when you remove the colour. And something that I heard recently from one of my friends is that when something is in colour, they may get distracted from the subject of a picture because something in a brighter colour is over their shoulder or outside the particular focus for the subject. And in black and white, you lose that problem. Let's get into the processing bit. So how do you go about making a black and white image? The first and easiest way is just taking a picture on your phone and using Instagram or one of the other social media apps to apply a black and white filter. The next way of taking a black and white picture is to change your camera settings into a simulation that shoots in black and white, like I've done here on my Fujifilm X-T20. So let's jump over to the computer and see how different processing techniques may affect how a particular image may come out as a monochrome image. So here is an image of some ice that I took on the window of our conservatory the other day when it's pretty damn cold. But you'll see here that if we look at the histogram, on the right hand side of the histogram there is no data, and on the left hand side of the histogram there is no data also. What this means is that there are no pure blacks and there are no pure whites in the image. Now if you're dealing in black and white, you want to use the entire range of shades of grey available to you. And to be able to do that, you need to drag this histogram to the two extremes. And you can do that in the tone curve module. So as you can see here, we've got this angled line here. If we take this is the white point here, if we drag that over to where there's actually data in the image, and the same on the black point, this has two effects. One, the image now uses the entire range of available shades of grey in the image, and secondly, because the gradient is much steeper, there is much more contrast in the image, And you can see that as we switch that on and off, how much more detail there is in the image through that increase of contrast. I hope you're enjoying this video, and if you have, please think about giving the video a thumbs up. It really makes a big difference to the channel, and maybe think about subscribing. This is an image that I took a couple of weeks ago in London. The absolute easiest way of making an image black and white in Lightroom is just to go to the saturation slider and roll off all of the colour. Simple. The next way of getting a black and white picture is to convert a colour picture into black and white. And here in Lightroom I can pick Adobe's Monochrome simulation, or if I'm particularly keen on the simulation that I have on my camera, I can match it and pick up, in this case Fujifilm, I can pick up all of the different film simulations and apply them. So here, there is the Monochrome. Lightroom also offers different types of treatments for black and white. Adobe offers more than a dozen simulations, and each one of them feels a little bit different. Some of them a little bit more contrasty, some of them a little bit softer. My favourites, I have two favourites from this set, is Black and White 4, which is quite contrasty, quite gritty, and Black and White 11, which is this one here, which is a little bit softer. What I would encourage you to do is to try these different simulations to try and find a style that suits your picture and your style. The problem with all of those techniques is that you are using a JPEG and you can't manipulate the pictures very well. You can change the contrast, but that's about it. So I'm going to show you how I process my black and white pictures. And what I would normally do is firstly check the histogram. We've got blacks over here, we've got whites over here, so there's a good range of colour. I'm going to probably pull the blacks down a little bit. I'm probably going to pull the whites up a bit. Now if you're a landscape photographer, that's sort of the opposite of what you'd often do. I may pull the shadows down a little bit, highlights up. So all the time I'm sort of getting more contrast here. You can see these peaks going up, and just going to pull the shadows down a little bit further. So by making those simple adjustments, you've got a much more crunchy image. You could emphasize this more with a sort of classic S-curve, which is great. It's got a sort of strong street vibe now. The next thing I want to show you is how you can use the colours in a black and white image to change the feel of a picture. So this is King's Cross walkway, and it's beautiful. It's got all these great colours. But if I make it black and white, I can look at the black and white mixer, and I can adjust individual tones. So if I remind myself what the colours are, I've got green, I've got red, and I've got lots of purple. So let's have a look at the greens. The greens down here I could make darker, which sort of sucks you into a black hole at the bottom of the image. And the purples I am going to raise. So very quickly you can use the underlying colours in an image to change the focus of where you're trying to attract the eye. Another thing that you can do is you can change the white balance in an image, and that will also affect how the image looks. So here I've done nothing on the black and white mix, but if I take the white balance, I can lighten the image, or I can darken the image. So it's always worthwhile playing around with the temperature of a black and white picture to change the feel of it. Now here's a classic gig picture. And I pulled it up because there's lots of blacks in there. If you look at the histogram, there's very little sort of light across the picture, and that was sort of intentional. I wanted to do that. But what the gig pictures in black and white tend to have a lot of grain. What you can do is you can go down to the effects module and just pull up the grain. So here I'm interested in this guy's this guy's leather jacket, and also you can see the grain around his neck. So you can go for a very extreme grain, which I've got here, or very little. And you also might be interested in changing the noise reduction. So here, if I pull the luminance noise reduction up, I'm going to smooth out a lot of this texture. Now all of a sudden this image looks very different from where we started. Your choice is how you want to make that image look. And in this case, this is too smooth for me. I much prefer the more gritty the more gritty version of this image. If we come back to this image, I want to remind you that of course you can use presets to store a particular style of image that you've created that you're happy with. So I've got a number of different black and white treatments that I've developed, and which I use as a starting point to adjust a particular black and white. So here it's sort of rather smooth. It's got a bit of a sepia feel to it. This one is very heavy on luminance, and I've taken a lot of the texture out. By comparison, this one here is much more gritty, and this one based on some streets in El Salvador, and this one has much less contrast. And the last little trick I'm going to show you is something that you really should think about when finishing off your black and white images, which is to use a little bit of color grading, which sounds slightly stupid, but bear with me. And so if I open up the color grader here, I tend to, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to overemphasize it for the video, but for the shadows I tend to add some blue, and for the highlights I tend to add some orange for some warmth. But switching that on and off, you can really see the ability to put a stamp on your monochrome photography that is unique to you. So there you go. I hope you found this useful. I absolutely love monochrome photography. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, I really appreciate it if you give it a thumbs up, maybe think about subscribing, and I hope to see you on the next one, and until then, thanks for watching and bye for now.